backfire on... There's an Onyxia! What? I want to talk about different things.
Life Coach just like, okay, what am I going to play in this Wombology tournament? Opened his Hearthstone client. The Dragon Warrior was still there from the Curse Trial. It's still built in his client. He opened it and went, I'll just shove Deathspite back in this. We're good to go. Seems fine.
Seems good.
Yeah.
Oh, this is ridiculous. So, Enervate Shade is an option for Ryzen here. Doesn't do it, though.
No, he might, again, just be all in on that Emperor Thaurissan plan. It did so much work for him in the previous game that he might just be reserving that coin and Innovate for that line.
Yeah, I have to admit, I want to see how Twitch chat reacts to that Druid Mirror. I'll need to go back and watch the replay.
Yeah, it's
Twitch's new chat replay feature.
Which no one has ever had access to before, right?
Nope.
No.
Well, to be fair, at least they hired the guy who did it before.
He's literally rechat now integrated in. It's not like they've copied some...
They could have just stolen his idea. At least they actually hired
They've actually employed him, yeah.
Alright, well, Fierce Monkey on Curve. Pretty nice pickup for Life Coach. The early Druid of the Claw again. Ryzen choosing the taunt this time rather than the charge.
Indeed. Gets the Shade next round, is now hidden behind. So he doesn't go all in on the Emperor. He does go for the more solid, consistent curve out of his hand with the Coin Innovate 5-drop into the 3-drop. The most natural curve that presented itself to him during that, using that Innovate. Does get the Shade down, still pretty early, so it is going to be able to grow at a fairly rapid rate, but still, you see kind of the difference from this deck with Control Warrior is he does have these minions in hand that he can just use to contest the board honestly over the next few turns here. In fact, if the hero power comes down here and no minions are developed, which looks like what's going to happen, he does have an opportunity to take the board against the Stealth Shade with the Blackwing Corruptor. It's not going to get any value, but he does get to play it out. Now with the Fierce Monkey drawn, seems like Fierce Monkey plus Alexstrasza's Champion is a more solid option to develop the board here.
Yep, sorry, the perspective there, just flipping back forward, had that the wrong way around.
Yep.
Yeah, Life Coach really has a dragon problem here, in that he has none.
Yes.
Which is really a bit of a problem, because this Blackwing Corruptor, the Alexstrasza's Champion, pretty ineffectual. Has picked up another Fierce Monkey, so he can curve with the hero power here as well.
He can indeed. I would expect just to see this Alexstrasza's Champion developed on board as a 2-3. It can get some work done to fight for the board in combination with that Deathspite. Say if a second Druid of the Claw comes down, you can use the 2-3 Alexstrasza's Champion plus the Deathspite to trade into it. But the Fierce Monkey will come down for sure, and I'm sure Life Coach will consider heavily, as he's been doing already, whether or not he plays this 2-3. I'd like to see it come down personally. Life Coach disagrees. He's just going to go with the Monkey.
Gonna hold on to the Deathspite, hit the hero power. Here's a swipe, which can help deal with this, but he's just gonna go for the Azure Drake, I think, and build up the board.
And
no trade.
That's a pretty rosy looking hand, and I like him just playing the Drake here because although it's a great target for the Deathspite to hit, he kind of wants that Deathspite off the board because he wants to play Emperor next turn. If he has to play Emperor into that Deathspite already being established, then he knows he's not going to get repeated value out of it. Whereas kind of representing the Drake here and forcing this Deathspite to be swung means that there's more chance for long-term value out of the Emperor Thaurissan and follow-up.
Yep. I think the stream has just caught up to the start of that insane Druid Mirror, so...
Yeah, I see double Innovate Druid of the Claw or no balls in chat right now. Well, you, the SLIK Bandit, are going to be very pleased with what happens.
Spoilers? I mean, 10 minutes. It's not spoilers because you'll have seen it 10 minutes ago because we're in the future.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So, Shieldbane on turn 6, of course, on curve is an option. You can also, use the Deathspite here. Could have done something with the Armorsmith instead. I assume the Armorsmith not going to play the Deathspite played. It was hit first.
Yep, so Ryzen does and doesn't get his wish. The Deathspite is used. Unfortunately, there is just another 5/5 minion on the board now that gets to immediately contest the Emperor, but unless he wants to find some creative play here with Swipe and Living Roots, which doesn't quite work. It's just a couple of damage off being a nice clear here, so I imagine... he's just going to go for the tempo play with the Azure Drake Living Roots. Interesting.
Yeah, like, he's trying to make these Azure Drakes stick and build up a board. So let's say he knows this is how he wins this game, right?
Yeah, I mean, the Emperor looked pretty appealing there, to be perfectly honest. It doesn't discount any combo pieces, which are usually your primary concern, but it does discount an Ancient of Law, an Azure Drake, a Swipe, and a Dr. Boom if you were to play Emperor there, which is a lot of tempo, so...
Still no dragons here, so he's just going to have to play the Corruptor.
Yep. Plays it out, and now Spell Damage Swipe can potentially blow this board out. Doesn't have anything to develop alongside that, so we'll probably just see an honest trade and another minion developed here. Whether he wants to take the value trade to protect his Drake on the board, or take out the bigger threat to protect the minion that he plays down alongside it is up to him. But if he's going with the Ancient of Law, I would suggest that he's going to make the trade into the 5/4 to protect his 5/5.
I'm enjoying Twitch chat telling us now that Ryzen's going to lose because he gets the Druid of the Cost wiped.
Uh-huh. Okay.
That's also good. Yeah.
I mean, I'm with them. I strongly disagree with
That's fair.
With the 4/4 play.
He did get punished for that, but wins the game later.
Yeah.
You know. So, yeah. Back to this game though,
Mm-hmm.
and the Druid stuff is still happening. He's just going to go for the Boom here.
Yeah.
So is he going to trade into the 5/4?
Right, the Boom gives him the potential of making the value trade into the Armorsmith. This is the point I was starting to make before we got distracted by Twitch chat again, where if he'd have played the Ancient of Law, he's pretty much obligated to take out the 5/4 to consolidate his 5/5 on the board, but by playing Dr. Boom, he does have the option of taking the value trade into the Armorsmith, and that's why I personally prefer it there. But that is great timing on picking up the Azure Drake. Activates all of this stuff in his hand. The Blackwing Corruptor and the Alex Trials as champion are both able to be used this turn for removal if he would like to.
Yeah, it's going to punish the slightly greedy trade. No, didn't trade the 4/4 into the 5/4, went for the Armorsmith instead to try and demand an inefficient trade from Ryzen with the 5/4.
Right.
The slight punish with the Blackwing Corruptor.
Yeah, I mean, it's not too much of a punish. You make this board expecting, say, okay, if that 5/4 has to trade up, it has to do it alongside another card. So that's kind of what's happening. It just so happens that it's pretty much the perfect answer because you get to develop the 5/4 alongside. So yeah, he's going to do it the other way around here. Alex Trials as champion and the 5/4 into Boom, potentially. Same thing either way, whichever way you choose to do it.
I mean, that Varian Rin is there for turn 10. I'd like to see it get played. I think we probably will if we get there.
Swipe Shredder looks pretty strong here though, and Druid is starting to develop a whole lot of dominance in this game, Callum. It might be down to that Varian Rin to swing it back if it gets that far. Shield block is decent, lets him cycle. Azure Drake is a cycle option as well, but he's going to need to pick up some answers very, very soon. We might even see that Sylvanas come down, though it seems unlikely because both the Emperor and the Ancient of Law seem like more appealing prospects for Ryzen next turn, but if he has the foresight to expect Varian Rin, Sylvanas would be an amazing play from him.
There's the Bran as well. I wonder if he plays the Bran here. Double Varian Rin. 6 cards drawn. Value.
Oh, the dream.
That is the dream. Just
That
a full...
is the dream, yeah.
No, it's actually not the dream because there's a pretty good chance. I mean, if the Bran and the Varian both live, if you draw 6 minions, what happens to the 6th minion?
Well, then, yeah, okay. They're not necessarily all 6 minions, though, right?
Yeah, but so if you do draw
If
6
you
minions,
do, yeah, it's a good
does one
question.
get burned or
I
does it
know.
come into hand?
So if you mind control tech with mind control tech as your 7th minion and it hits, then it does kill the minion that it stings.
Right.
I know that happens. I cannot say I have tested the Varian Rin on a full board interaction, so I can't answer that with any certainty, but I imagine it's the same rules.
Yeah. I think probably. Well, let's see.
Alright, I was going to say, if Ryzen has the foresight here to play Sylvanas, he is an absolute god, but I may be expecting a little bit too much of my boy.
Yeah.
It does go with the Ancient of Law, and now there is at least a chance here that Varian Rin can generate enough of a board state, but it's so slow.
No respect for the Azure Drake from Ryzen there. I mean, you can brand Twilight Drake, get a 4/6 taunt, but do you run a... I guess the question is, by playing Bran Twilight Drake, you can't really get anything done. Well, you can shield slam the Shredder, right? So you have the spell power to do that. So I think that's the only thing you can do proactively.
Yeah,
so are you going to get a better board from the Varian?
Life Coach says he's going to try and win the Varian Lottery here. Picks up Shield Maiden, a War Axe, and Issera! Wow! That's so huge. That's so huge.
Look at Life Coach's face! He's just like, yep.
Yeah, that happened.
I did that.
Now, ooh. Big Game Hunter Sylvanus Windrunner. Seems like a turn this turn.
I've got the beast in my sight.
It's not bad.
It's pretty good, right?
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
I'm just trying to think if there's anything Life Coach can do to prevent the Ysera getting stolen.
He can Nightmare it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, right?
Yeah.
The Nightmare. Yeah, so he's doing face. You can Nightmare the Ysera and do how much damage to face? Quite a lot.
Quite a lot.
Quite a lot. That's 9, 14, 17 with the Fiery War Axe. But how much damage are you staring down right now? 16. So
No.
you take out the 5/5. You take the 5/5 and then I guess you trade for you kill the 4/2.
Yeah.
6 damage from burst in hand, so that would be 7, 13. So a little bit short from Ryzen.
It is.
Savage Roar would just wreck him though.
Yeah, for all he knows, he has to be considering with how many cards have been drawn and looking back at 5 cards in hand, he has to give credit to a Force of Nature or a Savage Roar at least in his opponent's hand. We do see there's the Druid of the Claw that can charge that does add damage, but Life Coach is going to consider his play here based on the fact that there is a Savage Roar in hand potentially. He's going to work out whether he can afford to play around that and then make his decision from there. But it looks like the Ysera is starting off going into the Big Game Hunter. Fiery War Axe will come down presumably to take out the 2/3 here. And then the 5/5s will trade, presumably again. Yeah, so he's just going to leave this Ysera on board against Sylvanus. And just... Oh, okay, just about managed to get the Brown in. Again, it looked like Life Coach had been punished by the rope, but he gets the second minion in. But he does have a guaranteed steal here, does Ryzen, on the Sylvanus if he wants it. He can Druid of the Claw charge to remove the 2/4, and then he can trade into the Ysera and keep his own Sylvanus if he would like to do it that way. But it seems like Ryzen has decided that interacting with this Ysera is just far too slow, and he's just going to go in as deep as possible here.
He does like that charge Druid of the Claw.
He does, yeah.
Well, double Twilight Guardian is pretty good.
It's not bad, but only one of them will have Taunt.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
And even if they did both have Taunt, there is double Keeper of the Grove.
Right. The Dream can be used here. You know, even for 5 mana, Sap is sometimes a relatively effective card. So 5 mana Sap might be a consideration here to get rid of that Sylvanus.
Dream?
1 Taunt and Dream seems reasonable to me.
What is the consideration on Taunt? Sap the Sylvanus, kill the 4/2?
Yes, I think
is that worth it?
Yeah, I think it's worth it. You could also choose to kill the 5/5 by putting the Ysera and the weapon into it, so that the minion that you leave in play isn't competitive against the Taunt. But Life Coach is going to decide to just take out the 4/2. Wrath picked up.
Pick up Savage Roar here and do anything? Because there is a silence, so you could silence the Taunt, and then with Savage Roar it would be 5 + 4, 9,
not enough.
10. Yeah, not enough.
Not enough.
Well, so can you? Yeah, you don't have enough mana to do double Keeper as well. To Wrath and double Keeper, so yeah, you can't get an extra 2 damage. The damage is there. There's just not enough mana to do it.
Right.
Yeah, Ryzen's just going to silence the Taunt.
Just going to go face. He has 2 potential cycles next turn, both with the Wrath and the Wild Growth. He has another Keeper of the Grove that can silence another Taunt. So although he doesn't have the damage in hand to back this up particularly, he does have all the utility cards that can deal with Taunts and help him dig to damage. Plus he does have a massive board here alongside Sylvanus, which can be pretty miserable for Life Coach here. Life Coach is entering that kind of frantic mode. We see his eyes widening here as he gets close to his webcam. He's in that mode where he's desperate to find a way out of this game.
Yeah, it's hard to see how he can find one here, though. He might feel good about the second Twilight Guardian, having seen 1 Keeper, but we know there is a second one. He can trade away either the 5/5 or the 2/4. I guess he could trade. Yeah, he could trade both, but he would go down to 3 life. So that's just that's asking for trouble.
Does seem less than ideal. Gonna Nightmare here for tempo just to be able to remove some stuff off the board. Gets rid of the Lothar. Twilight Guardian to taunt. And he'll get the armor up in here alongside the Larving Sister, I imagine. Which means that the silence means that we're 4 damage off right now. So a top-decked Swipe, top-decked Savage Roar, or top-decked Force of Nature can all get the job done now. And he has redraws for more than one of those. That Innovate is actually relevant because it means he can cycle one card and hit Force of Nature.
Alright, let's see the Wild Growth.
This is for all the marbles right here. Darnassus Aspirant, there's the River Croc! The turn 10 River Croc!
We've talked about it several times.
Oh.
Alright, well, Rising as the Wrath here, he now is not able to Force of Nature. Savage Roar and Swipe are still out. Second Wild Growth? So, you know, he can't...
No, there's no more outs this turn anymore. He goes down to 4 mana, he doesn't get the Silence. It will have, well, with the Silence, he'll only have 4 more, or 2 more mana available after cycling again and casting the Innovate. So, no card for 2 mana ends the game here.
He kind of, he really does want the silence this turn. He can't really keep hold of the silence for the killing turn because otherwise he can't get a good trade with the Sylvanas.
Right. Chooses to take out the Acera here, uses the Innovate just to get the 2-3 out onto the board again, and he's so close. It's unbelievable. He's drawn through so much of his deck here, hasn't hit a single combo piece, and any of them would have been lethal for most of this game.
Alexstrasza's Champion, does that help?
It's an extra 3 damage worth of removal. It can be used here to decent effect.
Yeah, so I mean, he can Azure Drake armor up, which would take the Shield Slams each to 3. And that would be 7, 8, 9. So he could only do 1 Shield Slam and an Alexstrasza's Champion. So the 3 damage Shield Slams are slightly better, maybe?
Yeah. He also has this Sylvanas to worry about. He can't trade off the 2/6 here. Even if he double traded into the Sylvanas, the 2/6 would survive and still give his opponent another minion that he'd have to deal with.
He could double trade Shield Slam his own Drake.
He could double trade Azure Drake, armor up, Shield Slam 2 things, Fiery War Axe the 3rd thing. That is a way to clear the board for sure. Doesn't really matter which way he ends up doing it.
Yeah.
No, because there's the 4 health keeper, so that actually doesn't work here either. So as yeah, second Fiery War Axe doesn't help. Oh, did he get it in? Is he roped again?
I think he got it in. Yeah, he got it in.
Shield Slam comes down. Did he get the Alexstrasza champion?
No, didn't
out?
play the champion.
Okay. Savage Roar! Ryzen's
That's
done it!
Ryzen is your Wombology champion. You can see.
Well played.
Going for the dab. Back to the dab.
I still have no idea what that is.
You need to look it up.
Right.
Google it.
I will.
Google it. And Ryzen takes out Life Coach. He took out Sixo. He took out Orange. He took out Shaw.
I heard a lot of players also argue in favor of the Warrior, but the reason why I personally consider the Druid to be the favorite is just the like wave of minions and the longevity that the Druid has in making proactive plays. Some of the key points and things that could go wrong with the Druid is maybe not finding the card draw, running out of those minions while the Warrior can keep itself sustained.
Right, this is it though. Game 5. Winner of this advances. Loser goes home. Hearthstone World Championship ticket on the line. All the pressure in the world for these two players, and Amnesiac going to be on that Druid, Talion on the Warrior. Looking at Warrior's opening hand here, you see the Fiery War Axe. That's an auto include. You just keep it, right? Or do you not against the Druid because Darnassus Aspirant has been phased out?
Right, these players have information about the list. Classically, Fiery War Axe is a card that would go back against Druid. You have no need for it. There's no minions for it to interact with. Then Darnassus Aspirant was introduced to the game, suddenly became a keep because you had to shut down that Aspirant. Nowadays, are they playing it? Are they not? Talion will have that information. I don't believe we've seen Aspirant from Amnesiac's deck.
No, I don't think so either.
So the War Axe really as a keep only really interacts with the first half of Piloted Shredder, for example.
Yeah, it's a very good card to have against the Piloted Shredder, but also in combination with something like Bash, you can take out those Druid of the Claws.
Right, yeah, that makes sense.
Right, so do see the wild growth from Amnesiac. This is very important to get ahead of those ahead of the curve, as you were saying. Zotl, get those big mid-range minions out that the Warrior has trouble dealing with.
Yeah, more important in this matchup, much more important than a one-off innovate early. This isn't a matchup where you can just innovate one big minion out early and just hope that it carries you the whole way through. You really do want that consistent high mana usage throughout the game, so Wild Growth is the best card to have in your opening.
At 4 mana, Amnesiac going for the hero power, didn't really have anything else to play, but he had that Wild Growth to start things off and has a solid 5, 6, 7 going forward.
That said, are you necessarily looking to play the Thaurissan with that hand unless you draw some Ancient of Lore, some Force of Nature, Savage Roars, cards like that?
Right, that's the other technique in this matchup. If you don't go for the real power spike turns and try and get ahead and beat them up, the other technique is if you get the big resource hand where you draw a bunch of Azure Drakes and Ancient of Lores and then fill up your hand with like 3 or 4 combo pieces, you just jam Emperor on that and then suddenly, you know, Fatigue Warrior is not going to be able to carry that to Fatigue because you can threaten 20 plus 30 damage over the course of the game.
Right, so I was going to say, we saw Talion equip that Fiery War Axe with Savits. Is it all that useful anymore?
It's coming back to haunt him now. Not attacking with it earlier, because he really wants to play the Deathspite here. But if he does play the Deathspite, the Fiery War Axe got 0 value, and it just feels so bad. Seems like he's going to take a little bit of a slower approach. But yeah, playing that Fiery War Axe early on definitely came back to hurt him in this
And again,
instance.
to reiterate the point, he chose to keep it against a deck that we believe does not play Darnassus Aspirant, and we can see it's not really going to get a lot of work done. Sure, he's going to be able to slam twice into this Lothar, but the Deathspite would have done the job a lot cleaner.
Like, sure, he gets the opportunity to take 10 damage.
Yeah, woohoo!
Yeah, in this game, there keeping the fireworks really didn't pay off at all. But in case that he was unfortunate to not draw any other weapons at all, I think it's still nice to have a weapon, even if it's a Fiery War Axe, another Deathspite.
Yep.
Yeah, we do see the Brawl in the hand of Talion, and Brawl is one of the cards that does a fairly good job of dealing with Dr. Boom just because it, when it comes in, makes other minions, so it gives it a better chance of getting rid of the 7/7 body of Dr. Boom, but never a clean thing, and there's always that chance that the good doctor lives on.
Yeah, a wise man once told me the measure of a good card is if it 1-for-1's Dr. Boom. So things like Brawl and Brawl and Light Bomb, for example, fit into that category.
Yeah, it's a very elite club. Twisting Nether likes to hang out there sometimes too. But the discount comes in from Amnesiac from that Emperor Thaurissan. Again, not necessarily the best suite of cards to get those discounts on, but it's better than nothing. It will allow you to do some cool stuff later on with stuff like Azure Drake and Swipe as a combo, although much less relevant against this style of warrior.
It can do some things. Shield Maiden, for example, is one of the core minions that can really help to Warrior to build a board presence, so Azure Drake Swipe is a great answer to that. So it can get some work done in this matchup for sure.
Yeah, just gonna see one of those 2 brawls come out, and let's see.
This is huge. If the Dr. Boom wins, it's just not so...
The Boom Bomb hits for 4 though, so does get a pretty good effect out of it.
Yeah, and since Dr. Boom was the only minion in play, there wasn't anything else. It's not even a true 1-for-1 because the last Boombot does hang around, so...
All right, and Amnesiac just going to be able to restock that board, and while I was saying that the Emperor Thaurissan discounts were necessarily the most advantageous, he does have the ability to just jam things down on the board, and he's just going to continue to rebuild it and hope that at some point he just overpowers Talion.
Yeah, everything seems to be going Amnesiac's way right now. After that brawl, he's easily able to get a new strong board, and he just got an ace of the floor too. So even if this board gets cleared, he can just keep drawing and play more threats.
Yeah, that said, Dr. Boom being gone is good for Talion because the mid-range Druid doesn't necessarily have that many big threats. You've seen the Thaurissan, you've seen the Dr. Boom now, and now you're just in that territory where you have to weather the storm against stuff like Combo, which is very scary, mind you, and the mid-range minions like Druid of the Claw, Ancient of Lore.
That feels bad, man. Big Game Hunter right there. There's exactly one target for the Big Game.
Right.
For the turn after he dealt with the Dr. Boom without the BGS, he draws it. And
usually not the way that goes. The Big Game Hunter is almost always on time the second somebody plays a Dr. Boom in these matches.
Summon 2 Boombots, put a Big Game Hunter on top of your opponent's deck.
Yeah, I believe Disguised Toast made a video highlighting that.
believe so. He's wrapping his own boombot here. Gets 4 damage. I was gonna say, I think, yeah, he just had the free chance to potentially check for lethal. Yeah, exactly. I was counting this at the start of the turn. I was like, if he wraps his own boombot here, he can potentially have lethal. He took the free roll to do it. What a huge play from Amnesiac.
Amnesiac realizes he has a chance to close out the series right then and there.
Yep.
Punches ticket to the top 4, does it, it works out, and now he is going to emerge victorious from this series.
First time a player that we did not expect at all going into the Winter Championship to be the victor.
Yeah, it's sort of a big deal, and Amnesiac, I think he's proved that he should remain in those respected top players just based off his performance so far. But we'll see how he's going to do. Druid versus Warrior to start it off. We talked about this before, Reynad.
Yeah, some people claiming that Warrior is now favored. I'm still a little bit in the Druid camp, but it's so close. It's like the difference between 55% and 45%, you know? Can really still be anyone's game. Both players are just going to take their time in mulligans, see what the other player does first, it looks like. But yeah, the Druid is going to be looking for things like ramp. Amnesiac is aware that this is Control Warrior, so we might even see him keep the Ancient Allure here.
Yeah, I think it's extremely important for Drew to get those early curves, but like you mentioned many times in your very thorough analysis, Reynad, that Ancient of Lore keeping in the opening hand of Druid might even be one of the most valuable things you can do in your mulligan, because if you know, Drew can deal with some of the threats, but if you keep the gas going, eventually they might run out of their own hand because they don't have great draw mechanisms either.
Yeah, that Shade and Extramus, not too shabby either. It's actually the best tool, in my opinion, that Druid has against Warrior. Really tough to interact with. You can never really give them a good brawl to deal with it, and it just threatens combo at a certain stage of the game. Amnesiac looks like he just kept the whole hand, which makes some sense. It's a reasonable curve, and or maybe we tuned into it after the mulligans.
Yeah,
but,
I'm not quite sure, but you know, Ancient of Lore keep is sort of a risk assessment type thing where if you do have the threats to play earlier on, it's a good keep, but if Ancient of Lore is like your only keep, it's kind of risky because you do need to apply pressure early against the Warrior because you don't want to just give them time.
Yeah, the interesting thing about not playing stuff into the Warriors' game plan is that all their early game interaction is just removal. So if you're not doing anything, they're also not doing anything. So in a lot of cases, yes, you're giving them like more mana to deal with stuff later in the game, but this is one of the control decks that it's kind of okay to give time to, because for every turn you skip, they tend to skip one of theirs. But yeah, Living Root coming out here turn 1, it's actually a card that, you know, you're not really excited about it in the Warrior matchup, but you know, some Warrior lists these days don't even play cards like Armorsmith, so it actually gives some pretty good pressure, keeps armor down. You don't really want to War Axe that twice.
Yeah, it's a good observation. It's just so inefficient to deal with it as Warrior. Outside of cards like Armorsmith, and in this case the Cruel Taskmaster, you choose to Revenge straight up as well.
That's good value that Amnesiac got out of that. Cruel Taskmaster seemed like the higher value exchange there, but all Sky High recognizes it's pretty tough to get good value out of Revenge.
And also, the later the game goes, sometimes you need to keep Cruel Taskmaster to proc and execute, or even later on in the game, with the new type of Warrior deck, it can be hard to close out a game. You'll keep removing threats, and you'll keep removing threats, but then you'll draw Grom, and you don't necessarily will have an activator for it, so it can help later to close out the game.
Yep, all Sky High also aware he's already got that big game Hunter in his hand. Maybe he wants to save Cruel Taskmaster to bring an opposing Ancient Allure up to 7 attack, kill it off with BGH. But yeah, second Living Root's just going to give Amnesiac something to do before he develops his Shade. Lets him basically save his coin.
Well, I really like that observation that Cruel Taskmaster and Big Game Hunter has some synergy there. I think that's something that's really powerful to swing tempo back, because something that Warrior does struggle with is efficiently removing it without losing a ton of health, right? You might take a weapon hit and take that 5 damage anyways, and all of a sudden you're in range of just dying to a Savage Roar.
Yeah. In true Hearthstone fashion, Amnesiac draws Wild Growth as soon as it's terrible, and just going to develop Shade, get that going so that he can threaten a combo pretty early in the game.
Yeah, we've all been there. You know, Wild Growth still has some value in the late stages at least, but if he keeps drawing spells, maybe we do see a Wild Growth into an Ancient of Lore as well. Sometimes that does exist, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, he can sort of make that happen over the next couple turns. If he plays Powder Shredder this turn and can fit in a Wild Growth the following turn, it makes his Ancient of Lore come a turn sooner, which is a big deal, because spacing out your threats and having threats to play, and even just being able to combo one turn sooner can make the difference. Not giving the Warrior time to draw into that extra, you know, Shield Maiden, Shield Block, Bash, those types of things.
Yeah, I like this also just because, again, the Fiery War Axe challenges the Shredder. And I think he's just realizing right now that this is the best time to use Wild Growth. Otherwise, he's just not going to use it for a while. And he's anticipating that he'll be able to draw better.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see Acolyte Taskmaster come out here. I think it is better to Taskmaster your own Acolyte rather than killing the 1/1 off. But Allsky has some options. Could just see an armor here as well. He's gonna make the board for more board, or the play for more board presence, which I like a lot against Druid. You definitely just want to develop any kind of minion you can against the deck to kind of supplement your removal spells and clearing the board.
I think you also always want to get, or try to get, immediate value out of Acolyte of Pain in this matchup, because as the warrior, you don't have many good silence targets. So your Acolyte of Pain is almost always going to draw a Keeper of the Grove for the silence. So if you play by itself and don't utilize the cool Taskmaster to get the extra draw, a lot of times you don't get any draw out of it at all, because Keeper of the Grove, if it's there, will be used.
That's definitely a good point. Yeah, Acolyte and Warak's going to allow All Sky High to just get rid of this 2/4 pretty effectively, and I suppose he'll develop a Shield Maiden right after that. Gorehowl is a card that is just so incredibly powerful in these removal-based warrior decks to kind of give you inevitability throughout the game, make sure that you'll always have enough cards to deal with all of their stuff. But against Druid, it really gets you closer to that magic number of 14 very quickly that the Druid's trying to get you to. So very dangerous card to play against Druid, but if you can ever develop it on a board where you're ahead, it puts you in a great position.
Yeah, it's true, because Gorehowl just runs them out of threats eventually, but that's assuming you just don't die by the time you keep lowering your health. So I personally love Gorehowl as a card as well, but it is one of those really dangerous dances because he's going down to 21, and then you have to kill the next threat with your Gorehowl.
Yeah, that was a really interesting attack by Shade from Amnesiac. He just got punished really hard for that. I mean, Allsky now has Gorehowl developed, a ton of life to play with. If he can draw into things like Shield Block or Shield Maiden or just anything that like provides armor, bash, he's going to consistently be able to kill one minion from Amnesiac, while Amnesiac can really only develop 1 or 2 minions at a time.
He might have been hedging his bets against Brawl because he knows that he was going to be playing creatures the next turns, over the next couple turns. So getting the value on that Shade that turn, hoping that he doesn't have removal, and playing around Brawl for the following turn.
Sure.
Could be why he's trying to efficiently get in damage.
It's a possibility. I mean, he also saw Taskmaster and Revenge. Maybe doesn't have activators for Execute.
Yeah.
There's probably a lot of reasons why he thought it was okay, but he did get punished, like you mentioned. And that Gorehowl behind the Sludge Belcher will make it logistically annoying for Druid to get through.
All right, another Wild Growth picked up right on time for Amnesiac. So I think we're going to see a swipe to help him clear out here, maybe with an Emperor. There is an option where you Wrath here, I suppose, instead. Yeah, a few options. Either way, I think we're going to see Emperor get developed. Amnesiac's just going to look to cycle that Wild Growth next turn, and just really looking for combo at this point.
I do like the idea of cycling Wrath eventually here, just because you want to get close to that Force of Nature Savage Roar. And I do know that players have even thought, oh, that's pretty funny. I know that players have even thought about saving Emperor until they can guarantee get it at least on 2 pieces of Force of Nature Savage Roar combos. So that way they can guarantee a double combo if they draw into it.
Yeah. The Innervate actually works out well. It allows him to Emperor Coin Innervate Swipe if he wants, which gets him deeper in his deck with the cycle from Wrath, but also allows him to develop Emperor, but he actually decides not to.
Yeah, Amnesiac here is actually going for most likely a very macro strategy. He's going to cycle that Wild Growth next turn, so he knows he's drawing 2 cards. He's looking to potentially double combo Sky High at this point. He's got the Innervate, he's got Emperor Thorson trigger next turn to do it, so he's just looking to pick up a Force of Nature and a second Savage Roar.
Well, in this case, if Owl Sky High just armors up, I believe he might even just be range of dying to 1 Force Nature Savage Roar. I don't think it's intuitive to just bash right off the bat when there's nothing on here, but at the same time, you do recognize he might have the opportunity to kill you. Depends on this draw here.
Still 2 forces in the deck.
He still can cycle and innervate for that. It's not out of the woods just yet.
But is it worth the risk? Yeah, he can... Wild Growth would still do it because he has the Innervate for the combo.
There's a chance, TJ. Oh. Oh, right.
There's still a chance,
There's still a
Dan.
chance, TJ. We can dream.
Nope.
Aw.
Close, though.
Amnesiac's got those 2 Innervates and just all the mana in the world to play with, so I'll probably see him run those out here to develop a minion. Whether that's Emperor or Shredder, not sure yet. Emperor Thorson does die to... Oh, really? He's just not going to develop a dude. Okay.
He still has him in combo range.
Yeah, so some people might be wondering, you know, Amnesiac, you're not going to get full value out of these innervates. Why are you not playing more stuff? And the reason is Amnesiac hasn't really seen a brawl yet. We saw him kind of respect it earlier in the game with that first Shade attack. So he doesn't want to make his current Shade and Naxxramas vulnerable. And he's just going to wait to try to draw the combo, take advantage of that.
I like the hero power as well because he's still threatening the lethal and he has it! Oh my god. That's 22. Yeah. Because he has the ability to squeeze in the hero power as well.
Yep. So Asuka High did use Bash Face to play around just combo, but he didn't calculate what it would be with Innervate. I mean, there's some things that you just can't play around. You can't go above and beyond to play around every possible out that the Druid could have, so.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I mean, it's just one of the reasons I feel like Druid's a little bit favored. You get to that mid game and you just threaten combo to win the game from absurd life totals. And you see right there, Amnesiac uses Code Force in Nature to take 100% off of Sky High's life total.
Down. It's very likely that it's going to happen if the... Oh, as a warrior, but just one warrior. But it's very likely, even though the early game from the warrior mirror is very slow, a lot of armoring up, the Golden Monkey Showdown is so epic, and I want to see it on the big stage.
Right, we might get the opportunity to, but we're going to hop into game one here again. This is the final match of this tournament. The winner of this goes to the Hearthstone World Championship, and opening up, it's going to be Amnesiac on Druid and Nostum on that very potent Control Warrior. Really the surprise story of this tournament, how powerful it is. And Sottle, for the last time, walk us through, if you're the Druid, how do you get past this deck?
Yeah, so normal Druid strategy is just to play one big thing at a time. You use Innovate to get one big thing down on the board early, and then you continue to play your curve. You play your big Pilot Shredder on 4, your Druid of the Claw on 5. The problem is against this this Warrior deck, that 1-for-1 minion versus removal exchange isn't going to work out in your favor most of the time because they have so much removal to come down. So the key is really to find a way to spike on one turn to get multiple threats into play, overload the Druid removal, the Warrior removal, sorry, and then use that as a platform.
Yeah, and speaking of getting big minions out early, there was 2 Innervates and a Wild Growth, but Amnesiac not gonna risk drawing too many spells, throws one of the Innervates back, decides that having just one is going to be enough, and his starting hand is looking great.
Yeah, again, we see the explosive potential of an incredibly early Emperor Thaurissan in Amnesiac's hand. How many early Emperors have we seen from Druids in this tournament?
Right, it's been a fair few, and we talked about, you know, obviously when you're playing as a Druid, you're looking for Wild Growth, you're looking for Innervate. Emperor Thaurissan is the cherry on top, and it allows you to accelerate so quickly, even though you're not necessarily getting those core cards out there. But look at this curve. Turn 3, Shade of Naxxramas. Turn 4, Innervate into Emperor Thaurissan if he wants it.
I'm really intrigued by the fact that he played the top-decked Shade there instead of the one that was in his hand. That's very, very interesting to me because you coined Wild Growth on turn 1. What that signals to your opponent is Shade of Naxxramas or Innovate 5-drop. Those are the 2 things that are likely to happen. So he's just given Nostum the information that there is probably a card in his hand that Wild Growth was supposed to set up. Whereas the card that was drawn, the second Shade, there's no possible information on that.
Yeah, exactly my thoughts. That's interesting because he also went for the old Shade first, and then he switched to the one that he just drew. It'll be interesting to hear his thoughts on why he chose to play the freshly drawn one instead.
Right, now it might seem like a small consideration, but the highest echelons of the game, these are the things that matter, and these are the things the players are noticing. And it's why you see so much time on things like the mulligan, because these mulligans telegraph so much about your hand and ultimately lead you to the predictions. I've spoken with a lot of the players over the course of the weekend, and they all start their stories of their matches by explaining, hey, I saw this, so I expected this.
Yeah, quite often, based on how many cards your opponent has kept, you can rule out a lot of cards that he could potentially have. For example, nobody would keep an Azure Drake in the starting hand in some matchups and so on and so on. So keeping track of how many cards, what cards are the ones that were kept in the mulligans, you can rule out potential threats.
Right, it's particularly potent in some matchups. For example, as a Zoo player against Control Warrior, if you see the Warrior mulligan their whole hand, you're more likely to keep something aggressive like a Knife Juggler that would lose to a Fiery War Axe. It's a really important thing that tends to lead to both players just roping the mulligan in high-level situations.
Right. Amnesiac did choose to play down an Emperor Thaurissan, even though enough damage to clear it was represented on board between that Fiery War Axe. And we saw, obviously, the Taunt had just run into it. Taunt's still surviving here, but looking at Nostum's hand, you know, what does he do in this situation?
It's interesting, because there could be that potential that he wants to keep his Shade hidden right now and just use one roar to maybe pop that, but I would probably be leaning towards just using the Shade that's on the board and see what pops out of the Deathlord first. Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, Shredder is nice, means he can now play that extra Shade of Naxxramas out on the board, and this is exactly what we were talking about before. He now has a consolidated board, multiple minions requiring more than just the spot-for-spot removal that the Warrior wants to play.
Yeah, and not only is the Shredder hard to remove, but it's also not a Battlecry minion. Like there's another Ancient of Lore in the deck, and getting that on the board, yes, it's a big minion, but you don't get the chance to draw with it later on.
I was going to say, realistically, Shade and Shredder are probably the best minions you can get off that Deathlord, so... that's working out very well for Amnesiac. We see double Savage Roar in his hand. We do not see a Brawl in Nostum's hand. And we've talked at length over the course this weekend about just how deadly Shade of Naxxramas can be for the Warrior to deal with, because Brawl is realistically its only way to clear it.
Yeah, sometimes you can get it out with the Revenge if you can get your life total low enough to get the damage boost on the Revenge, but that's a little bit tricky, and if you're low enough to use the Revenge efficiently, then you're probably in the combo range.
Yep.
Right, so looking up at Amnesiac's hand here, you can see the value of that Emperor that he played. It wasn't the best Emperor, as you pointed out, Rob, but what it allowed him to do is get to that Ancient of Lore quickly, which he was looking at his hand, he could see that potentially there wasn't much to do for several turns, but speaking of getting to Ancient of Lore quickly, there's something that actually prevents it unless he wants to bring that Shade out of stealth.
Yeah, interesting play there. I think that's excellent value from that Doomsayer. It kind of forces the Shade out of stealth here, and at worst you gain 7 health.
Yeah, what I really like about that is because you'd seen the Emperor Thorsen at that point, you know that if he has a 7-drop, it's going to be on 6 mana. So you are basically forcing that reaction, as Savid said, get that Shade out. So he did get something out of it, and we are now going to the Grand Tournament. Justicar Trueheart comes down.
Is that lethal right there? Nostum did not go for the Brawl. 13
plus 8 plus 8? That is a large amount of damage. I believe that is just lethal, yeah. That's crazy.
Wow, just like
Has the Living Roots as well if he needs it.
Right, Amnesiac really quick to identify that, pulls the trigger. He goes for it, 16 damage between the Shade and the Shredder. Hero power, not required. He's got enough damage, and he is going to go ahead and take game 1 in this series.
I wonder if that was a little bit...
A lot of points, but you want to win, and Druid into Control Warrior. Savitz, you're making a face.
I mean, it's a pretty good pick. Druid in my books is the favorite in this matchup, and it's definitely his chances to win with the Druid are better than in the 50-50, so to say, Control Warrior mirror.
Were you really expecting the Control Warrior mirror here, Savitz?
I mean, he has to win with all 3 decks, so it's quite possible that he would have started out with it. Why
sure.
not?
Because I want to win game 1.
What's happening here, Savitz, is that Nostum is going to fully set up the drama. He's going to climb back to 2-2, and then we're going to go out in game 5 on the Golden Monkey Showdown.
I like it.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right, well, looking at the opening hands here, Amnesiac probably going to toss away Harrison unless Malfury and Claws suddenly start counting as a weapon. Probably not going to keep that Sylvanas either. Deathspite is what I would consider the only keep in this hand.
Yeah, Deathspite is definitely your boy in this matchup. That's what you want in the hand. So he'll be keeping that. Wild Growth, much the same from the Druid side. That is an instant keep. Wild Growth much preferred to the one-off spike of Innovate early in this matchup for the reasons that I've discussed. You want that constant mana growth, and honestly, Innovate is sometimes more powerful in the mid-game to play 2 minions at once.
Okay, that's interesting. Nostum chose to keep both of his 5-drops. I was expecting him to potentially keep 1.
Right.
But the second one... I personally might have... Well, now that makes it look like really bad, but that was unfortunate, drawing 2 more 5s. But I personally would have maybe leaned towards trying to find a Shade of Naxxramas or a piloted Shredder for that turn 3 where he has 4 mana.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's been made to look even more stupid than possibly it is just by the draw of all the 5-drops, but keeping 2 does seem a little bit ambitious with all the positive draws you could get to go with that Wild Growth.
Do want to point out, though, once he starts chaining together those 5-drops, he will be putting a lot of raw power on the board. 4-6 is not a convenient stat line for the Warrior to remove, so... And Shredder, where were you? What were you doing?
That is the 1 extra card that he would have had if he...
Right, yeah. Is that how it works? I'm not so sure.
Maybe not.
Yeah, but Deathspite in combination with the piloted Shredder here is going to be excellent for dealing with that 4-6 bear, and this is a situation that I've talked about where it's just 1 minion at a time at the moment, and we're kind of fine with that as the Warrior player, because we have plenty of options in our hand to deal with the situation. I love this from Nostum, actually, the charge here, because now we immediately get the situation. 2 minions in play, much harder to deal with.
Yeah, Belcher does die to a Deathspite, but still not too bad. Something small like a Shade of Naxxramas would have been easily cleared with the Deathspite, Death Rattle, and the Revenge that we can see in Amnesiac's hand.
Right, and you brought up the magic number 2 when it comes to playing the Druid mid-range against Control Warrior. You never necessarily want to put more than 2 minions on the board because it obviously leads to a more favorable brawl unless you're looking to close that with something like Lotheb to get basically the end of the game. But putting 2 minions on the board is not necessarily always the best for the Warrior to remove conveniently, so I definitely like this.
Yeah, it can depend on, yeah, it's basically risk assessment, you know, how hard do you have to push to be able to win the game, how secure is your position. Sometimes you do have to go all in against that brawl, but for the most part, this is a fairly comfortable matchup for the Druids, so they can afford to play it fairly pedestrianly, not take too many huge risks.
Yep. Amnesiac just gonna go with that Belcher here. The 4-1 and the Slimemark gonna, well, he could actually Azure Trick and Hero Power instead.
Yep.
I'm a little bit surprised that he didn't Trick first, but not a big deal.
Yeah, Nostum's taking pretty quick turns here, and one thing I'd like to see is maybe him slow down just a little bit and consider these options more, because it seems like this line was a good one, but at some point when you're playing really quickly, you are just bound to make a mistake, and it's one of those things in this situation, you know, mistakes like this can give you fits later on.
Yeah, there's not really many or any cards that he could have drawn from the Drake to change his play, but in general, if you're drawing cards, it's better to draw the cards first, just in case that there's a card that you didn't remember about that would make you have even a better turn.
And I think what's interesting is we didn't see it that turn. Amnesiac slowed down and considered his options. It was quite a complex turn, but on turns where things are straightforward, Amnesiac is playing very quickly as well. And from my perspective, just watching this, it feels like Amnesiac is the more comfortable of the 2 players, and maybe him matching the pace of Nostum is almost an encouragement to Nostum to keep playing at this pace because he feels like it's working to his favor right now.
Yeah, I do think that Amnesiac, from what I've seen him play, that he tends to always play quite fast.
Okay.
And maybe consider his options already on his opponent's turn, and his style is very fast, but I do agree with that assessment that Amnesiac seems to be a little bit more comfortable with these fast turns, and I would hope for Nostum to slow down just a tiny bit.
Right, and that seems ridiculous to say, right? Amnesiac's 15. This is a guy who we've never seen in a tournament necessarily of this scale. You know, this is the America's Winter Championship, and all weekend, win or lose, obviously he felt a little bit bad after, you know, he felt he underperformed in one of his series, but otherwise he's just been the very picture of being comfortable in this tournament.
Yeah, and he's had some experience in some decent sized tournaments, nothing on this level, but you know, you don't get to be a part of Archon without taking part in some huge events at some point in your career, so he probably is the slightly more experienced on a big-ish stage than Nostum, but this is a foreign environment to him, and as you said, incredibly impressive that a kid of just 15 years old can handle this.
Yeah, here against that Death Spite, Shredder, I can't think of anything better.
Yeah.
Nice. If that's gonna be the quote of the finals, at least it rhymes.
Grommash, not a terrible option here if he wants to try and fight back onto this board. A little bit short of defensive options, kind of a few cards stuck in hand right now. Revenge not effective at full value. Brawl is looking down at a couple of Death Rattle minions, not particularly effective either. So Grommash might be the option here just to try and defend himself against this board a little bit.
Yeah, it's really scary to play it though, because he's down to a combo range, I believe, if he was to go with that. So shield block might seem like the play that he has to make, even though it might not feel that good.
Yeah, I was about to say, if he shield blocks though, he really does need some help from the top of his deck to give himself something nice to do that turn, and the bash that he picked up was pretty fantastic.
Right, it might not necessarily seem like a whole lot because there's still an entire other Shredder up there, but just being able to gain health while removing the first part of a minion, and Shredder is one of those minions that absolutely punishes the Warrior player because Warrior has to use so much removal on it, and oftentimes is just incapable of fully removing the full minion.
Yeah, the weapons do take out the Shredders quite well, but doing that just costs so much life total.
Whoa, what is that Lotheb? That Lotheb looks out the Brawl. It's so much pressure now. The coin is in hand, but of course you can't coin Brawl under Lotheb conditions, so this is such a consolidated amount of pressure now here from Nostum.
What a time to pick up that Lotheb. It's going to protect Nostum's board, and if it came one turn later, Amnesiac would have been able to Brawl anyway, just paying that 10 mana.
All right, let's look at what... Is that lethal? No, that's not lethal quite yet, but Ancient of Lore, big pickup, gonna allow him to get even more cards if he chooses to use it. Might just choose to swipe the Grom and then swipe face.
Yeah, I mean, swiping Grom here allows him to push more damage to face this turn because he doesn't have to trade with it. Honestly, he doesn't really have to trade with it anyway because of how high health total he is right now, but the Ancient of Lore will help him just dig nicely to that Savage Roar.
You know, you've already seen the Sylvanas at this point. Savitz, is there merit to possibly just putting that Keeper over the Grove 2 damage into Amnesiac's face? Like, what are you saving it for?
just I think that the lore is just so much stronger of a minion. There could have been an option where he just swipes the Chrome and then like keep her face. I could imagine that happening, but going for the draw with the Ancient of Lore to try to find the Savage Roar seems like the line of play that I personally like the most.
Sure.
Yeah, and the first Ancient of Lore chain draws him into the second Ancient of Lore, so even though we haven't hit the Savage Roar just yet, he's going to have all the resources in the world to clutch out this game. Amnesiac going to have to find something special here as the Warrior player if he wants to get this over and done with right now with a 3-0 victory.
Yeah, Vitality Totem might not seem like the best result. Do want to point out it will keep him topped off as long as it survives, and it benefits from Savage Roar, so not necessarily the worst thing to get out of a Shredder.
Yeah, Slam could clear the board fully here, but Amnesiac may be running a little bit low on cards, so it's hard to pull that trigger because the card draw from it in the future would be very beneficial.
Yeah, I think we're going to get an indicator here of just exactly how desperate Amnesiac is, because the decision whether to slam or not this 2-2 actually says a lot about where he feels he is in this matchup right now.
Yeah, it's
there
really
you go.
Yeah, it's really hard with just a big game hunter and Harrison Jones as the minions that he has
Right.
to really do much things against the Druid.
Right, speaking about being nervous to pull the trigger, we've seen that Gorehowl just sit in the hand, and Gorehowl's great when you have health to spend to get rid of minions, but that is not a place Amnesiac is currently at.
Absolutely not. Second Lore is played, more cards drawn, still no Savage Roar in hand, so he's going to have to take his time to get some work done here, but the Gorehowl is finally going to come down, cleanly take out this 5/5 minion. He goes down to 15 health, can go back up to 17 with the hero power, which means a Savage Roar draw would be lethal here. Does he even have enough with the... never mind.
Goodness.
I believe he may have had enough with the 2 Innovates anyway. Is that right?
Force of Nature, swipe, innervate, swipe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was enough
That was
already.
enough already,
That's
yeah.
exactly
He got the win, guys. He doesn't need to go for the win plus. So he's set right here. He is going to go ahead and bring the series to 2-1. So hats off to Nostum. He's still in this series. Has to win 2 more games. Amnesiac's still in a great spot, though, with that